The global economy is facing what many thought would be a worst-case scenario. Oil isn't flowing out of the Persian Gulf. So why isn't the world, or at least markets, melting down?
The only reason that Canadian economists don't sound more alarmed as a group is that, again, most of us are probably counting on this to be over before too long. So we're giving some hope to the idea that the U.S. president doesn't want a long war.
Economies are proving to be pretty resilient. But for how long? Hi, I'm Paul Havershrud. Welcome to The Cost of Living. If the war in Iran ends soon, Canada's economy could muddle through. If it goes on for longer? Later in the show, we talk to CIBC chief economist Avery Schenfeld about what happens then. Also today, something a bit sweeter. A trip to the confectionery counter, where chocolate is still king, but candy is coming for the crown. Up first, we know how to get a job the traditional way. You apply, interview, you're hired, hey, congrats! But that's not the only way to go. And in this employment market, more people are now finding ways to make their own luck. So Daniel Nerman, the unemployment rate just ticked up to 6.7%. You look back not that long ago, it was down in the fives.
Yeah, it's definitely getting tougher out there, especially for young people. Youth unemployment, apart from the pandemic, hasn't been this high since the mid-90s.
And if you're young, you're just starting out, you're trying to get established, that cannot feel great.
No, there's a lot of anxiety out there. A new report just came out asking Canadians about the labor market. A majority say they don't feel like their job is safe.
And part of that has to be because of AI, right? Like the number of jokes I hear about, hey, AI radio show host coming. I don't love those jokes, Danielle.
Good thing I'm not a host.
Yeah, I didn't love that.
But some people, Paul, have decided they're not going to wait to get replaced. They're charting their own path, and they're doing it by going into business for themselves. Stephen Boughton helps people buy and sell small businesses. He's with Chinook Business Advisory in Victoria.
In our office, we've noticed a shift in younger people being interested in the idea of acquiring a business, buying a business, doing what's known now as entrepreneurship through acquisition.
So instead of starting a business from scratch,
they're looking to buy a business that's established, one that's already chugging along nicely, like a car wash or an HVAC company. And that's where Stephen comes in. Every day, he says he fields dozens of calls from eager buyers.
Picture, on a Wall Street movie where stockbrokers are calling each other, hey, talk to me. What do you got? You got anything new in the pipeline? I'm ready. I've been sharpening my skills with looking at toilets.
I'm sorry, toilets?
Yeah, they want to buy plumbing companies.
Oh, okay. Well then, yeah, toilets.
Or they want to buy vending machines. That's what Frédéric Gervais Tanguay did. He lives in Quebec City, always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but he didn't want to get involved with a startup.
I don't consider myself as someone creative, and I like to take risks, but like calculated risks. So when I found this business, I made a lot of research, and what I loved is that it has been a business that has been established for like dozens of years.
Okay, so he bought a vending machine business, and it sounds like one that's been around.
Yeah, he bought it off someone who was retiring. They were already set up in offices. And, think about it. Snack machines are everywhere, right? Airports, hotels. Frédéric started off with 10 machines. That was 3 years ago. Today, he owns more than 200.
Whew, so he has like a whole little empire here.
Yeah, and he's 21 years old. Frédéric just quit his job at a bank to run his business full-time. Now he spends 12 to 14 hours a day driving around, filling up vending machines with chips and chocolate bars.
Okay, so probably making money, but also grinding.
It's not glamorous, but that's kind of the point. It's what he calls a boring business.
Of course, vending machine is a boring business. I mean, you fill up machine, you collect cash, and that's it. Like, there's nothing fun about doing it, but it's a established business. It's a money maker.
Well, yeah, well, there's money in snacks.
Everyone loves snacks. You know, a boring business is a business we all need and use, like duct cleaning or dry cleaning. And if it's been around for a while, it likely has, a reliable customer base. So you're not just buying a business, you're buying customers, and you're probably going to have a predictable cash flow.
Well, who doesn't love predictable cash flow?
Right? Which could explain why more people are doing this. According to the Business Development Bank of Canada, or BDC, in the last 4 years, the number of people who received financing to take over an existing business increased by nearly 15%.
Do we know why that's up?
There's a few things going on. Some of it is about opportunity. There are a lot of businesses for sale right now, more than 55,000 across Canada.
Well, how does that stack up to where it has been historically?
Well, it's up from a few years ago, and it's probably going to keep growing. A lot of business owners in Canada are getting older. They want to retire. It's been called the silver tsunami or the boomer exit. According to BDC, in the next 5 years, nearly a fifth of all business owners in Canada intend to sell.
Okay, so that's a lot of people who need buyers, but the thing about buyers is you need cash with which to buy.
And that is one of the big challenges, especially if you're young and you don't have a lot of savings. But in some cases, these retiring owners, they'll work with buyers, let them purchase their business bit by bit over time, because if they don't help with the financing, they may never sell.
Okay, so they've got some incentive to do this, to kind of play ball with whoever the buyer is. And, you would think that on some level, if this business is something you've built, it's kind of your baby, maybe selling it to someone who's young is going to keep it going, that could feel good.
Oh, for sure. If you've had a business for 30 years, you're probably emotionally attached to it, and you don't want it to just disappear and no longer be in the community.
But does somebody want to do that thing, right? You look at Frederick, he's driving around 12 hours a day, stocking candy machines. Are there enough Fredericks out there who want to do that kind of work?
Well, there are a lot of people promoting this on social media. Tons of influencers making videos about how to buy a boring business in 5 steps. Like Cody Sanchez. She's an American who got rich buying laundromats.
The millionaires I know aren't trying to go viral. They're buying businesses that cash flow on autopilot. You don't need to be a genius. You need ownership. I put together a full list of...
Well, she's very influencer-y, isn't she? I mean, she's pitching this.
Yeah, there is a lot of hype out there. But Stephen Botten says you need to be careful about falling for it. Sure, it's nice to be your own boss, but Stephen says if you're thinking of quitting your day job to buy a business, remember, it comes with a lot of responsibility.
I've heard funny stories of people working in these fancy office jobs.
Then they buy a business, thinking it will be easy peasy.
And then they're out picking up the phone when their call center person doesn't show up to work, or their technician shows up drunk at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday.
What are you going to do?
Right? You own the business. It's on you. This is definitely not free money. You are putting in the work.
You are, but it can pay off if you can see an old business through fresh eyes. That's what Mark Zojibwami did. When he was 26, he and a friend took over a signage business in Calgary. It had been around since the 70s, so its accounting software was kind of outdated, so they changed it. And
all of a sudden we knew hey, you know what? This is the minimum amount of money we can charge on jobs. And that first year, I think we grew our earnings by 30, 40%.
Ooh, he's polished that boring business right up.
Sure did. And he sees a big future in this. He now co-owns 2 sign shops and is looking for another established business to buy.
So doing this, he is a true believer.
Oh, yeah. In fact, he now helps other people do what he's doing. He's like a boring business consultant. Mark says the old promise that if you get a good education, a reliable career will follow, that no longer is a sure thing. He says more people are realizing the security you get from a 9-to-5 job is disappearing.
I can't tell you how much I talk to people who work in tech who tell me I'm scared that AI is going to steal my job. And so I think there's an appeal for this AI resistant, AI is not going to be fixing your toilet anytime soon. Maybe we get there eventually, but maybe not as quickly as some other jobs that'll be replaced.
Yeah, AI. You know what we have? Right here. I'm showing you. Opposable thumbs.
Those are some nice thumbs.
Well, they are, and humans have them, and there's stuff we can do with them.
Yeah, like fill up snack machines. Frederic Gervais-Tanguay thinks his job is probably still safe for a little while from the robots.
And how does he feel about it? Like, he's driving around, but is he happy?
Yeah, I mean, he likes making money. His revenue is now in the 6 figures. He's planning to buy more vending machines, hire some staff. And he says if you're thinking about doing what he did, buying a boring business, the key is don't wait.
I was 18 years old at the time, so I have no obligations. I live at my parents'. It's the time to do it, because when you want to start something, if you started at maybe 30, 35, when you have kids, a home, the risk is at maximum. But when you're 18, it's the moment to do it. So I just did it. Why not?
Pourquoi pas? Hey, Frederic. Thanks, Danielle.
You're welcome.
This is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Oh, and if you're listening to the show and like it and haven't subscribed, please give us a follow. Make sure you don't miss an episode. We're out every Friday. Chocolate has been called the food of the gods. That's actually the cocoa tree's technical name, Theobroma cocoa. It means food of the gods. And for years, chocolate has been the undisputed king of confectionaries. It's built empires: Mars, Nestle, Hershey. But now, even the Easter Bunny will tell you something could be coming for the crown.
Little mini bunnies, chocolate Easter bunnies, some of the crispy eggs.
Amber Spence is getting ready for this year's Easter egg hunt.
Some toffee.
Amber's hunt is on another level. Her family has put it on for 6 decades for about 100 kids.
It's pretty chaotic. You've seen kids running across the field like, wait, as everybody's running up the hill going into the forest.
Now, you can't pull this off without a lot of effort and even more planning.
About 6 weeks in advance, we start to gather different types of candy, different types of chocolate.
This year, though, they're going lighter on the chocolate and all in on the candy. Canadians still love chocolate. Chocolate industry revenues are up 40% in the last decade. But candy revenues over that same time have doubled. Paola Gevedoni owns the Candy Bar in Toronto. She says at Easter, people still want the classic eggs and bunnies. But Easter candy is no longer just an afterthought.
I have gummy bunnies. I have Percy pigs. I have, I call them the bad bunnies. They used to be called flappies, but now they're called bad bunnies.
Paola says our growing love for candy goes beyond Easter. And a lot of that has to do with social media.
TikTok is a real driver of sales. So when kids or adults are on there talking about some new candy, the lineups start at my shop.
You can watch people scoop candy online and watch influencers eat candy and whisper close to the mic.
Little pastel-y rainbow.
Honestly, like some of those ASMR videos, with the the sounds and the nails and the beautiful lips. It's like, why wouldn't you want to try something, right?
Sally Lyons-Wyatt is with the global research firm Circana.
Consumers want to eat something that they can maybe share, maybe talk about, right? From a social standpoint, maybe create a moment.
And right now, candy makers are trying to outdo each other. Sour Patch has candies that glow. There's popping Skittles. Shack has a line of hoop-shaped candies for March Madness. This is not the candy aisle of our youth, people.
There's different formats and textures. There's different collaborations that are happening between different brands.
And there's something else. Inflation. Sally says people may not be splurging on the big things right now, but they are willing to splash out on the little things. Because let's be real.
We all need a moment to pause and enjoy. And that's what confections brings, is actually joy.
Amber Spence has a practical reason for buying more candy this year. It's cheaper. In the last couple of years, the cost of cocoa has more than doubled. And Amber has to stuff a ton of plastic Easter eggs.
A small bag of Cadbury eggs is like sometimes $15, right? And when you're hiding in the area of like 12 to 1,500 eggs, that's a lot.
So this year, Amber picked up a few chocolate eggs, but stocked up on candy, including the it girl candy of the moment, fluffy gummy peelers.
Kids love these peelers. Like, you're talking about what's trending. This is one of the things that
She bought them in bulk because
after the hunt and after everybody has a hot dog, then all the kids sit and we literally throw candy at them.
For the cost of living, I'm Jenny DeRosio.
It would be nice to be able to talk about all the good stuff Canada's economy has going for it. Because, it's spring, the Easter Bunny's hopping around, why don't we let in the sunshine? But we're not going to do that. Because the economy has worries. Just listen to economists at the International Monetary Fund. They say regardless of what happens with the war in Iran, all roads lead to higher prices and slower growth. Avery Schenfeld is here to look at what that could mean for Canada. He's the chief economist at CIBC. Avery, hello.
Hello.
So Avery, before we start, I just have to ask, you're dealing with a lot of stuff right now. You're a macroeconomist. Just how are you feeling, personally?
Well, I'm feeling nervous because my job is to try to predict the future. And with Donald Trump in the White House, the future changes radically from week to week. And this war is just another dose of uncertainty on top of what we've been living through for the past year on things like trade and tariffs.
Well, what about that statement from the economists at the IMF that all roads lead to higher prices and slower growth? Do you agree with that?
It's decidedly true for the global economy. High oil prices will drain consumer spending power around the world. And it's not just oil prices in this case. We've had disruptions in fertilizer shipments, uranium shipments, natural gas shipments out of the Persian Gulf region. And so there's really quite a disruption to the global economy. Different countries are in somewhat different positions to weather the storm. We're not as much at risk as, for example, some places in Asia that are heavily dependent on natural gas coming from the Persian Gulf. And are already rationing energy to some extent, but we're still at risk to disruptions in the global economy.
Okay, well, when you think about the combination of higher prices and slower growth, this sounds like a recipe for stagflation. Before I ask you about the risk to Canada of stagflation, I'd like to just ask you this. For people who haven't heard the term, aren't familiar with it, can you just explain what is stagflation?
Well, it's that ugly combination where nothing is going right. So you have high inflation, and at the same time, you have slow economic growth. Usually you don't get both of those at once. You get inflation when the economy is actually roaring ahead, and you get a drop in inflation when the economy is weak. So stagflation is sort of the worst of all possible worlds.
Okay, and do you see that as a risk for this country?
Well, that was what we saw in the 1970s oil shock, associated with what was called the Arab oil embargo at the time. But I don't think we're necessarily doomed to replay that 70s show in terms of what we're going to see this time around. That was an extended and protracted disruption in world oil supplies. It came at a time when the world was actually much more dependent on oil. So if you measure oil consumption per unit of economic activity or per unit of GDP, it's much lower now than it was in the 1970s. back then, many Canadians were using oil, for example, for home heating. Canada was not a net oil exporter in the 70s, so we were a net importer of oil. We drove big, honking cars that used a lot of gasoline. We've done a lot to reduce our dependence on oil, but more importantly, really this comes down to how long one expects this to last. A month or two, or even 5-6 months of high energy prices is not what we would call stagflation. That really refers to an extended period of that combination of weak growth and high inflation.
What about the more general inflationary pressures that we're seeing come out of what's happening in the Gulf, though? You mentioned fertilizer. There's things like liquefied natural gas. I mean, when you start thinking about the ripple effects of this, I'm reading things about generic drug prices being affected, and even things like furniture. I mean, it starts to go on and on. It all seems to be inflationary. I mean, what kind of a concern is that for us in your mind?
Again, it does come down to how long one expects the war to last and how long the disruptions to energy supplies are. So we're really watching two things. When is this conflict going to end? And how much damage is being done that won't be quick to repair to the oil producing assets in the Persian Gulf? So are we blowing up the oil fields, natural gas facilities? Are we leaving them relatively intact? And are we expecting this war to end? Donald Trump says 2 to 3 weeks, but even if it's 2 to 3 months, well, that will be a disruption, and we'll see it in the inflation numbers for sure, and Canadians will feel it filling up at the gas station, which they already are seeing. But when we look back on this a year from now, will we remember this as the great oil inflation of 2026? Not if the war is over in a few months. So it really does come down to that. If you look at what financial markets are betting right now, they're actually betting that this won't last that long. Basically, financial markets at least are assuming that this will be not completely reversed, but largely reversed by the time we get to the end of the year.
I've actually wanted to ask you about that because, for years, for decades, the idea that Iran would block the Strait of Hormuz was almost considered like a worst case scenario for the global economy. And now that it's happened, as you say, financial markets are kind of looking through it. Oil prices have gone up, but not in a catastrophic way. They're not at 150 or 200. And I'm sitting here as an old oil and gas reporter thinking, wait, this was it. This was the apocalypse. And yet the apocalypse isn't unfolding. Like, why not?
Well, if this war continued, if we were still talking about this war, say, in December, I think you would see $150 a barrel oil, because right now, for example, we've cushioned the blow by releasing strategic petroleum reserves from major countries around the world. That won't last forever. And so we would see oil prices climb further. So again, it comes down to people betting that Donald Trump's past behavior suggests he's unlikely to persist in a long conflict. And there's reason why politically that would be a big challenge to the White House and to his party facing midterm elections in November. So we're sort of counting on voter ire in the United States to really cause this thing to be wound up one way or another before too long. But there is, of course, a scenario that we're worried about and watching for, which is that doesn't happen, that there is an extended disruption. And in that sort of outcome, we would certainly have a lot more to worry about on both the inflation front, the spread of inflation to goods that we ship using diesel fuel and so on. All of these negatives that you're talking about, or you called it an apocalypse, would be much more visible in a long, drawn-out conflict. But that would be, sort of political suicide for the president and his party. So we're betting, at least, our markets are betting, that he'll take a U-turn off that path.
What about the economic growth side of things? We had some growth numbers. They were fine, I guess. But as you look at all the things that are sort of stacking up, perhaps against the economy, what do you think the outlook is for growth this year?
Well, we're starting from a position where the economy is sort of hanging in there, but is still soft. We have a 6.7% unemployment rate. That's too high. We have a lot of people struggling to find work. And so we have an economy that is on the sluggish side. And I guess the one negative for economic growth here for Canada is that had this oil shock not happened, the Bank of Canada might at some point have decided to cut interest rates further to get some more juice into the economy. But now the central bank is fearing that that might not be the right approach if inflation is about to heat up. And so they're sort of handcuffed and feeling unwilling to, give us a little bit more momentum with still lower interest rates. So we've lost that potential insurance card that we would have had in an interest rate cut. As I said, for the economy as a whole in Canada, the evidence is ambiguous as to whether high oil prices are good or bad, because we do have a big oil and gas sector. But certainly for some parts of the country, central Canada, it would be, undoubtedly a negative for, say, Ontario and Quebec, which are, as a province, they're oil importers, of course, and they get hurt by high energy prices.
It's so interesting when I'm listening to you. It sounds like, yeah, this thing is happening and it really matters, but also it feels like Canada is going to muddle through. Is that a fair way to look at your thoughts?
I think so. We would probably muddle through. We'd be better off than some other places in the world, Europe and Asia and so on. But the reality is that we are still facing uncertainties on other things like our trade relations with the US and so on. We entered the year with a pretty soft economy. So this sort of volatility and another dose of uncertainty is not great for businesses trying to plan or decide who to hire and so on. And so in some sense, it does create a cloud over our future that we'd rather not have. And I think the only reason that Canadian economists don't sound more alarmed as a group is that, again, most of us are probably counting on this to be over before too long. So we're giving some hope to the idea that the US president doesn't want a long war, and that if the Americans and the Israelis cease their bombing effectively of Iran, that Iran will decide that it too can quiet down in terms of its threat to oil shipments through the Gulf.
Okay, Avery, thank you.
You're welcome.
Avery Schenfeld is the chief economist at CIBC. That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Danielle Nerman, Jenny DeRosio, and Jennifer Keene, with help from Jeff Kynock. I'm Paul Havershrud. Thanks for listening.